Osiris, the usurper, the absorber, the hawk, the bull, the wolf. Kenti, amen to you, the illusionist. Enjedi was a key deity that Osiris absorbed. Backwards with wordplay applied, we get at, age, DNA. DNA backwards is and. This and this, right? Combination of skills, etc. And traits and features. We also must note that Seeker is also associated with Enjedi, as well as the bull, Serapis, Serapis. We'll get into that in part 2 more. User Hoppy. So the E, right? So, pair, ease. See rape is, see rape as, so rape as, see rapes. And we'll get into this, pan and panic, right? Panic, sex, rape in another video and how it compares, how it relates to that. Bull peoples of the Delta, Busis Iris, Basiris, okay? Ba's iris, okay? Ba, the iris, the window of the soul, right? And the difference between the Ba is the soul revisiting the tomb, and Ka is the personality, protective genius, transcendent part, and double. These definitions aren't exactly consistent with the truth, but there's some truth in them. This is more of an Osiris explanation for it. The Ka is associated with the bull, and the Ba with the ram, I believe. Okay, the goat. So we get to Kenti, amen to you. Osiris, Kenti, amen to you. Lord of the Westerners. Abydos. We have the monuments made for Osiris with the head, the wig, the feathers, and the horns, right? The feathers for righteousness. The wig becomes significant when we see Pluto and Hades being compared to him. And of course, the wigs being worn by the British, right? And we have King Tut, the R1B. There's a lot of connections there, whether that is significant or not. Whether that is true or not. We see the R1B is the rib, right? The play on words. Okay, and the horns. Okay, he was associated with the bull peoples of the Nile. An important association that goes over a lot of people's heads, I believe, is Lycopolis or Asiut. The wolf was worshipped and was identified with Upiat. So Kenti, amen to you, the wolf, and also Upiat, Wepawet, the Middle Egyptian location, the opener of the ways, the leader of kings' advance guards in war. So beware of wolves in sheep's clothes, right? These are Satan's advance guards, and they infiltrate into the church, right? They come first. And it's the spies, the informants, the plants, right? The tree of knowledge, right? The plants. Okay. So also, Wepawet is also said to accompany Osiris on his Pacific conquest and said to be his son. Also a form of Osiris and was called Sekhem Tau, or Sekhem Tai, T-A-U-I. Power of the two lands. Upuwet stood at the prow of Ra's boat as it passed through the river of the underworld, and also in the same position in the boat of Osiris. This is key. We'll explore that later. Mainly revered as opener of the ways to the west, the underworld, showing the dead souls the path through the dark realm. Horus and Set said to once live at Lycopolis as wolves. Now you must separate the Khan-hor, the Min-hor, from Horus the Elder. There's Harpocrates, Horus, son of Isis, right? Har-Isis, and Har-Oeris, Har-Wer, which is more associated with Horus the Elder. Okay, so the feathers of righteousness, right? He started off as a minor god. This is key, right? These are minor gods that took over. Mont, Amen, Kenti, amen to you, Osiris. Okay, so the dead were called Osiris X. Now remember how that brings us back to the Chi-Ro, right? The X and the P superimposed, right? The passive nature of Osiris, okay? Osiris at times can be said to be a threat to Ra. So sometimes he's friendly, sometimes he's a threat. This kills the idea of Lucifer not being at odds with Ra or with God. The sixth dynasty collapse is key to his reign, right? So the central government collapsed, and we see this turning point where Osiris starts to gain power, and especially by the New Kingdom and the late period and the Ptolemies, we'll get into that in part 2. So we see the Second tie, right? Seek him, tie. Seek ham, tie. And of course you have the suit and tie, right? Follow suit. Seek, follow. Right? He's called the good one. Remember, the Pharaoh is the good god. And so this leads some people to believe that Osiris was actually a king named Jer, whose name was said to be misinterpreted as Kent originally, right? Kenti, amen to you. So it's also important to note that we see the wolf depicted as a standing wolf or a wolf-headed man. Okay. Pluto, when we get the Osiris, right? Pluto is Hades. It means the rich. Okay, Pluto, the rich. The rich is under the earth, right? Men, mining, and the rich earth itself, right? The worship of this world, right? The rich. So the devil, his cult is literally the cult of the rich. We see the native worship of animals. This lost as Serapis is solarized at the end of the Egyptian religion. Okay, so when the Greeks definitively take over in their quest to unite Greece and Egypt under their new god, Serapis, right? We see the end of the Egyptian religion, and the priests are complaining that they're not incorporating the animal worship, quote unquote, which is really the study of animals from a martial arts perspective, like we see in Kung Fu. So now this one's key as well. Osiris cartonnage. Okay. In the 26th dynasty, the portrait of the deceased in a cartonnage was introduced. Cartoon, channeling demons, right? They're kind of gay, kind of sugar, silly, sexually immoral, Bugs Bunny kissing, violent, weird, crazy, lunacy, Laloon, the moon, okay? In Roman times, it was replaced with a wooden panel. Wednesday, Woden's Day, right? The middle of the week. Talk about stress. Stress can make you act a little crazy, can it? Okay. Osiris and Horus found truer voice in the trial. This is key, okay? Because even in their own Osirian myth, that Osiris and Horus have found truer voice. They're telling the truth. Eternal life and happiness had to be earned by righteousness. The magic was no longer included as the Osiris cult went on. You could no longer fool the gods using magic spells. You had to use virtue and be true of voice in righteousness. So the judgment of the Zed said to pass from Ra to Thoth and Jeb and then to Osiris. He said to be the good one, the redeemer, and the judge who awaited his son who came from earth. Okay, he's awaiting his son to bring his followers to him for judgment, or bring the Egyptians, bring man to his judgment. The Hall of the Two Truths was the location of Osiris's throne, which stood at the top of a flight of steps which represented the primeval hell on which originally Ra had been born and had begun creation. So instead of God's primeval hell being sacred and Ra is born from it, and it's there, it's sacred, it's at Heliopolis, and so on. Okay, now we have steps as Osiris is usurping Ra's solar function. And eventually it will lead up to him being solarized. We'll get into that in part 2. Okay, so that's where his throne was. The steps, okay, this increasingly became associated with the resurrection in the afterlife. These steps that formerly were the primeval man. So he had a tightly fitting robe of feathers that he wore, the feathers of righteousness, with the royal crooked scepter and whip. Okay, and this is key. It has to do with Uraeus, Uraeus versus the US staff scepter. Okay, which is the U-A's. You're the A's. This is your staff of the gods, versus the Uraeus, which is kind of the serpent, Buto and stuff coming into the picture, which represents snaking, right? Snaking one way or another. Some people think of the snake as some kind of sacred Egyptian symbol that has to do with traversing the realms. But that's the hawk, right? This is the snake usurping the hawk. The snake scale versus the hawk measure is another way to look at it, which is where you get the feather of the ostrich more associated with Nubia, which is where you get Mayat. Okay? And of course, Mayat has two spellings that are common. One is M-A-Y-E-T. May-E, the T is the plus, or the I of the E. The other one is M-A-A-T. Okay, of course this can be a mat. I go over this as Sekhmet, right? Sekhmet, the women more associated with practicing indoors, right? The lower soul, they bring the soul into this world. They lower it into this world, right? They capture it and lower it. So the Sekhmet, Sekhmate, okay, and the Sekhmayat, right? The mate, the mat. Okay, moving on. The throne was enclosed in a shrine in a wooden coffin. The shrine had the Uraeus serpents, Seeker, the hawk-headed deity. Seeker was a hawk with a human head. It was decorated like the throne of the pharaohs. Okay, also he had the Atef crown. He usurps the cult powers of Ra, right? Isis and Nephthys are behind him. And that about covers it for this video. In the next video, I'm going to bring you through the transition from the Osiris cult to the new Serapis cult. And you see that Osiris was already, he's seated, right? He has a passive energy. He's already changing the game in terms of how things are seen, right? The pharaoh is losing his power and his significance until it is all the way gone, and he's replaced with the Pope. Okay, and the Pope is like a non-martial artist, doesn't even call himself Pharaoh. And eventually then Protestants will come, and it's the complete democratization of the Pharaoh's power. They're stepping away from the Pharaoh more and more as they're stepping away from martial arts more and more. Martial to order. Okay, so Osiris, the feathers, his association with the hawk, and Seeker, he's associated with Seeker. So there you get the hawk. The bull, the bull people of the Delta, Busiris, where he used to be. Okay, the wolf, Lycopolis, or Asyut, where Yipuet and Wepuet was said to be his son. And Osiris is also said to be the wolf. And Horus and Set were also said to have forms of wolves because these are the people pretending to be the true hawk temple and the followers, which can be seen as the cattle of Ra, and they can be seen as the sheep of Jesus, and they can be seen as the martial arts temple of Haru, the horse. Okay, the Eldor.